The British Army. To an outsider, it looks like one single fighting force. In reality, it's divided into more than 40 independent regiments, each with its own culture and traditions. And if you want to understand the British Army, these regiments are the best place to start. In this program, we go back over 300 years to meet a regiment born out of the bloodshed of Scottish rebellion.
That's the charge.
The signal to attack of a cavalry regiment that led the charge for the newly united kingdom at one of the greatest battles in British history.
It was glorious, it was colourful, it had an effect, and the Battle of Waterloo was fought and won, and we were part of it.
A regiment famous for its grey horses.
Having a grey horse is a bit of a nightmare. I mean, Percy does seem to get covered in utter crud.
These men were the romantic heroes of the scarlet-clad cavalry.
I think I have a skew with bearskin. Nothing to do with ship your head.
Bound together by Scottish roots, which once carried them all the way to #1.
Jimmy Savile met us at the door. Top of the pops this was, fighting with the Beatles.
It's a modern tank regiment, but one still inspired by its cavalry past.
That ethos, that spirit of speed, shock action, strike, manoeuvre, boldness, all the traditions of the cavalry went from horseback into main battle tanks, and that's how we see ourselves to this day.
This is the British Army's senior Scottish regiment, the Royal Scots Dragoon Guards. The 10th of March 2011, Fallingbostel Camp, Germany.
They can move a little bit, can't they? They're not glued on the tarmac, are they?
The Royal Scots Dragoon Guards are gathering for the last time before their regiment deploys to Afghanistan.
The nature of the army nowadays is such that it's pretty rare that you manage to get a whole regiment together in one place, and so this is quite special for us.
Last one, on the count of 3, straight back camber legs, 1, 2, 3.
The Royal Scots Dragoon Guards is a cavalry regiment of 381 soldiers and 45 officers, one of 10 armoured regiments in the British Army. In preparation for Afghanistan, the regiment has been training with new armoured vehicles called Warthogs.
It's the modern age and, well, things have changed, but it's just instead of horses, we used brand new vehicles. With this vehicle in particular, it could go almost anywhere, just a modern horse, really.
I would say they're manoeuvrable, fast, agile, and they can deal with any terrain, I think. Yeah, amazing.
One of the regiment's jobs in Afghanistan will be to protect convoys of slow-moving supply vehicles.
We see this as very much a traditional role for the cavalry. One of the tasks of our Warthog squadron is to keep vulnerable areas and vulnerable points safe to allow the convoy to move through.
We were all going to a spot where we were at high ground, where we can overwatch the convoy and at the same time look all about the areas for enemy activity.
The Dragoons' last job of the day is always to check their vehicles.
There's an old cavalry mantra that goes back hundreds of years, but we still live by it today, and it goes very simply, horses men self. Horses or your vehicle come first. You need to make sure that that piece of equipment is fighting fit before you can achieve anything, and that's almost the essence of being a cavalry soldier.
The Royal Scots Dragoon Guards can trace their roots back to Edinburgh in November 1681. Their first colonel was a ruthless royalist and ex-mercenary, Tam DL, also known as Bloody Tam. His 300 troops scoured the hills on horseback to hunt down their rebellious countrymen. Thousands of rebels were slaughtered and executed. It became known as the Killing Time. The regiment's loyalty to the Crown was rewarded in 1692, when it became our Royal Regiment of Scots Dragoons. To this day, it's the only regiment allowed to fly the Scottish Royal flag.
The ancient royal standard of Scotland flies outside regimental headquarters whenever the commanding officer is in the building or in the barracks, and stencilled on the side, the commanding officer's main battle tank, is a picture of the Lion Rampant as well.
Remember, boys, if you're being a girl, if you want to put a jump around your waist so we can at least have a hope of recognising you as such. Okay, Ross has been the girl, so Ross then turns Lewis.
In the mess, the officers regularly practice Scottish reels.
Not too aggressive! Okay, you guys get ready to go. Okay, go! As a Scottish regiment, it's very important that we keep these traditions alive, and inevitably it turns into a bit chaotic, but it's all about having a good time, and it's a very important part of what we do.
About 2/3 of the soldiers in the regiment are Scottish, and for some, the regiment is in the blood.
Okay, my name is Captain Kev McDowell, currently the Quartermaster of the Royal Scots Dragoon Guards. Primarily, I joined the regiment because my father was in the regiment.
My name is Billy McDowell, and I served with the regiment for the best part of 22 years, and I left as the rank of Staff Sergeant.
My name is Trooper William McDowell, and I'm due to arrive at a regiment in a couple of months.
We have a great family tradition within the regiment. In fact, I had two brothers who served alongside me.
Between us, and including my two uncles, we've done 85 years service within the regiment.
In the early 18th century, the Scots Dragoons were called to the battlefields of Europe, taking up the cavalry charge for the first time. Previously, Dragoons had always fought as infantry. Now they would fight from the saddle to break the enemy lines. In May 1706, at the Battle of Ramillies in Belgium, the regiment proved it had mastered the art of the charge. Led by the Duke of Marlborough, the Scots Dragoons routed the French cavalry. The charge was still practiced in the early years of World War II, when Jim Randall was a 24-year-old trooper in the regiment.
If you had 30 horses cantering side by side, they soon became practically knee to knee, very close to each other. And one or two chaps would bite the dust.
They still carried the cavalry sword and performed the same drills as 18th century dragoons.
First of all, you would reach across, grasp the hilt of the sword, draw it from the scabbard, hold it overhead, and then drop it down to point at any enemy that might approach.
Veteran bugler Bill Cross still remembers sounding the order to charge.
That's the charge. Halt is pom, pom, pom. That's halt. And used to practice going over a jump, blowing it, you know.
Horses are still an important part of regimental life. But now they're only used to battling it out on the polo field and for ceremonial occasions. Grey horses like these were first used by the regiment 300 years ago. They gave the regiment a name that stayed with them for centuries: the Scots Greys.
In grooming terms, having a grey horse is a bit of a nightmare. They do become a lot muddier than others. I mean, Percy does seem to hop into the fields and just find the muddiest bit and roll in it and just get covered in utter crud. And it's quite hard work to get it out of his coat.
Just make sure there's snaffles behind the pillow. This kit is about 300 years old. These are our original wrens from the Scots Greys. And you can see they've got thistles embedded all the way along in the leather. Very tricky to clean, but very smart.
In 1940, every new recruit still had to learn to ride.
During our training, of course, we were inside a riding school. Some of the recruits had never sat on a horse's back before.
I'd never been on a horse in my life. And of course I was scared stiff when I first went there. Then I had a horse bit me once. My bloody nose.
Quite a lot of them found themselves rolling on the floor.
Also with the Scots Greys, they had to be scrubbed down and washed every Sunday morning, and used to have to buy a tablet of soap which cost me about £2 to wash my horse's mane and tail.
Stand still! See, if I had to poke this stick into your toe caps, it wouldn't really make a difference, because there's no polish there at all, is there? There's not even a shine on it.
The regimental sergeant major is preparing the troops for a royal visit from the regiment's deputy colonel-in-chief, the Duke of Kent.
Yeah, we've got Duke of Kent's visit this week, and this is the barrack guard or the honour guard, so they need to be immaculate because this is the first eyes on royalty's got to get in the regiment. So things like boots not being well prepared are not a good start. Fluff under there as well.
Alright, Chart, it's not a race.
For the royal visit, some of the soldiers will wear scarlets, a similar uniform to the one worn by the regiment in the 18th century. Quartermaster Kevin McDowell is in charge of the regimental wardrobe.
Something quite unique to the Scots Dragoon Guards is the fact that we wear the white bearskin. This is normally worn by the likes of Cottle Harnetti when he's on the drum horse. If he's not on parade, then it's given to the bass drummer within the pipes and drums. Now, the story goes with this particular bearskin is it was made from this hide of a polar bear, which is still the rest of it in this box. And this, the story goes, was presented to the regiment by President Ronald Reagan.
How high do these belts go?
Really high up here.
Really high up.
Whoa, you broke it. You have to adjust it. You broke it.
This uniform is only worn by the regiment for ceremonial duties every couple of years.
Now, which side does it go on?
Left. I think I have a skew with bearskin.
Nothing to do with the shape of your head. And how does it attach?
And these sword loops feel like I've got a tail attached.
You can't really do it yourself.
I always find it extraordinary just to think that this is the kind of uniform that the soldiers of the regiment would have fought in and worked in on a daily basis, and they'd have had to go through this process of getting themselves ready pretty much every day.
There's a lot of history of the uniforms that we wear, and everything means something rather than it just being clothing. So the cross belt with the pouch on the back was used for carrying the ammunition, and the belt for carrying the sword whilst on horseback.
Some people might not think it's right to wear polar bear, but it's part of the regimental history, so yeah, I like it.
By the early 19th century, the cavalry was capturing the public's imagination as the heroes and villains of romantic fiction.
I think the stereotype for a cavalry officer, certainly the 19th century stereotype, is of a figure who is dashing, charming on the sort of good side, but on the bad side, a sort of hard drinking, gambling, womanising, roguish type of figure. And I think that certainly most junior cavalry officers like to sort of aspire to this Flashman-esque stereotype of being very stylish, conducting oneself with dash and elan. And I think that that's part of what makes us who we are.
It was absolutely, it was so embarrassing.
Officers' mess dinners are always really traditional events. The first time you go to one, it is a little bit strange and it's quite overwhelming because it's quite a formal atmosphere, but I think it gives you a real sense of pride and duty. It's about maintenance of history and remembering where we've come from.
This is the officers' last formal dinner before they deploy to Afghanistan. Traditionally, a Gaelic toast is proposed before the regiment goes to war.
Diolch slans de Bangri. Slans na Abergabra. Ag slans a Gullia Gillior. Slans, Slaniva.
In June 1815, under the command of the Duke of Wellington, the Scots Greys were preparing to fight Napoleon. They hadn't seen action for more than 20 years, but were about to take part in a battle that would decide the fate of Europe and come to define their reputation. Waterloo. On the 18th of June, the Scots Greys were positioned here on this ridge. They formed part of a force of 900 cavalry, the Union Brigade. England, Scotland and Ireland, the three nations of the newly united kingdom, were all represented. And they were fighting together for the first time under the new Union Jack flag.
Wellington's troops were formed up here along this ridgeline on the high ground, defending Brussels to the north, and Napoleon's troops were formed up down to the south.
Faced with an army larger and more experienced than his own, Wellington's only hope was to hold his position until reinforcements arrived.
But at around 1:30, Napoleon launched 18,000 of his infantry troops under the command of one of his best commanders in the direction of La Haye-Sainte. This put Wellington's line under serious pressure.
Wellington's infantry began to give way, so he turned to his cavalry. Corporal John Dixon of the Scots Greys was in the left flank. He later wrote an account of the battle.
Immediately, Colonel Hamilton shouted out, "Now then, Scots Greys, charge!" And waving his sword in the air, he rode straight at the hedge in front, which he took in great style. At once, a great cheer rose from our ranks, and we too waved our swords and followed him. I dug my spur into my brave old rattler, and we were off like the wind.
As they charged, they passed a fellow Scottish regiment, the Gordon Highlanders.
They shouted, "Go at them, the Greys! Scotland forever!" Many of the Highlanders grasped our stirrups, and in the fiercest excitement, they dashed along with us into the fight.
In a matter of minutes, the cavalry had cut through hundreds of enemy soldiers, smashing the French line and pushing back the attack. The charge was described as the greatest thunderbolt ever launched by the British cavalry. Napoleon was overheard cursing those terrible grey horses.
On horseback, you've got that ability to manoeuvre around the battlefield when a battle might go either way and really seize the moment.
The bugle call sounded the halt and rally, but the Scots Greys pushed on towards the French artillery, spurred on by their commanding officer.
Colonel Hamilton rode up to us crying, "Charge! Charge the guns!" And we went off up the hill. We got among the guns and we had our revenge. Such slaughtering.
James Hamilton was unstoppable.
He was slashed by a French lancer on his wrists, but he carried on. He carried on against the odds, leading his regiment in battle, and he did so by gripping the reins of his charger in his teeth.
Hamilton was never seen again. Now leaderless, the charge of the Greys continued. In the front rank was Sergeant Charles Ewart, one of the regiment's finest swordsmen. Ewart saw a French standard up ahead. Raising his blade, he made a bid to take the Imperial Eagle.
The enemy and I had a hard contest for it. He thrust for my groin. I parried it off and I cut him through the head, after which I was attacked by one of their lancers. I cut him from the chin upwards through his teeth. Next, I was attacked by a foot soldier with his bayonet, but I parried him and I cut him down through the head, so that I finished the contest for the Eagle. The Ewart is absolutely a hero. His tomb's on the Esplanade at Edinburgh Castle, and the first pub in the Royal Mile's named after him, so we all think he's a hero.
Edinburgh Castle is the regiment's home headquarters. Here it displays the trophy of its proudest victory.
This is the eagle captured from the French. Napoleon adopted these eagles for each of his regiments from the Roman legions who carried the imperial eagle. The piece is in metal and it is covered in gilt, and it is quite heavy. This is a very special item for the regiment because of its significance from Waterloo.
The gold-leafed eagle is so important to us because it's a symbol of the decisive manoeuvre, speed and enormous bravery that our forefathers performed on that day in June in 1815 on the battlefield at Waterloo, and it's what we are and who we are.
The French Imperial Eagle appears on the regiment's war memorial in Edinburgh, on horses' livery, epaulets, and on the cap badge. The Scots Greys paid a heavy price for victory. Of the 391 who charged, 104 were killed and 98 wounded. But their sacrifice helped win the battle and brought peace to Europe after nearly 20 years of war.
One piece rear! March! And we blew that one, didn't we?
The regiment is getting ready for the final parade before Afghanistan.
Left! Start!
Sergeant Chart and Corporal Harnety will have a ceremonial role in the parade.
It's always good to get the horses out, get their kit on, get dressed up in the old regalia of the 3rd Carabiniers and the Greys. So when the Duke of Kent arrives, we'll be off to the side on the horses, looking pretty.
The Scots Greys' last mounted action came in 1940 in Palestine, when they formed patrols to help keep peace between the Arabs and the Jews.
I have wonderful memories of those days. I can see in my mind's eye the whole regiment, 300 horsemen, winding its way down the Jordan Valley.
A year later, the regiment received the order to give up its horses for tanks.
I didn't want to lose the horses. I hated the thought of having to travel in a motor vehicle of any sort, because lots of the chaps, including myself, had never driven a motor vehicle in their lives.
In 1945, the Scots Greys fought their way into Germany. When the war ended, the regiment remained with the NATO forces to counter the Soviet threat. The regiment is still based in Germany today. On the 2nd of July 1971, the Scots Greys united with a fellow cavalry regiment, the 3rd Carabiniers.
New cap badges are fitted, hats replaced, and the new regiment is formed. Together, they took the name the Royal Scots Dragoon Guards.
To mark the occasion, the regiment's band recorded an album, a farewell to the Greys.
We recorded it in the gymnasium with blankets around the walls. RCA was the record company. And at the very end, they had some time. They said, have you anything else to put on the record? We said, well, we've just got this new tune called Amazing Grace we're working with. Can we put that on? They said, if you must. It was played once by BBC, and of course after that, they rang up RCA and said, you have a hit on your hands.
Amazing Grace sold 4 million copies worldwide. On the 11th of April 1972, it reached #1 in the UK charts, where it stayed for 5 weeks.
Now what I suggest is take a pass at it, straighten it all out, take a solo pass, so we've got a choice. And then what we'll
The regiment's band is now recording a new album.
So okay, so here we go, a slightly straighter version. So the new take, the new pass, and we're off.
I'm 21 now, started playing the pipes when I was 4. I was just mad for it. For some strange reason I wanted to play the pipes. Obviously I like being a soldier, but piping's my thing, to be honest. To get paid for doing something I enjoy is superb.
March on the standard!
The final parade in Germany before deployment to Afghanistan. His Royal Highness, the Duke of Kent, is here to bid the troops farewell.
I come and see them whenever I can, and it's always a great pleasure to come back because they're my old regiment. But I think when you belong to an organisation like this, it's something that you feel you belong to really for life. And although in my case it's now getting on for 30 years or more, even since I actually left, I still feel that I'm a member of the regiment and that they're my friends.
This is my first tour. We've done a lot of training for it and we've waited our turn, should we say, so I'm really looking forward to going. The guys are really like family, so it's worth fighting for each other. You know that each man's got each other's back.
My son Kevin and all the lads that are in the regiment at the moment have gone through a lot more than I have, and our heart, mine and my wife's, go out to them every time they go away on a tour. And I don't think people realise